First Minister's questions. Members will wish to join me in welcoming to the gallery the Governor of Punjab, His Excellency Mr Mohammed Sarwar. Question number 1, Joanne Lamont.
Thank you very much, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister what engagements he has planned for the rest of the day. First Minister.
Well, in addition to meeting the Governor of Punjab, I'll also be meeting Alistair Niederer, the Chief Executive of the French company Teleperformance. When we met this company earlier this year, it was they hoped to be able to announce 500 additional jobs in Scotland. I can now say that's not the case. They will be announcing today 1,000 additional jobs across sites in Scotland, in Glasgow, Kilmarnock, Erskine and Airdrie. I'm sure everyone will welcome this as a great boost for employment in Scotland. Less happily, Presiding Officer, I should say to the Chamber we have a serious and developing situation in terms of the A83 and landslips caused by extreme weather conditions. The Transport Scotland engineers are on site at the present moment, and will update particularly local members of the serious consequences of this transport interruption in what is a vital road for Argyll.
Joanne Lamont.
Thank you very much. And of course, I too welcome Mohammed Sarwar to his new position, which I'm sure he will serve as well and as honourably as he did in his last position. And obviously, we welcome jobs coming to Scotland. The challenge will be whether people can access those jobs. In 2011, the First Minister pledged to reindustrialise Scotland. To do that, you need to equip the people of Scotland with the skills to take up the jobs. And to do that, you need to have the colleges to teach people those skills. Can the First Minister tell me, has the number of people in colleges in Scotland gone up or down since he came to office?
As Joanne Lamont knows, we've kept our commitment in terms of full-time courses at colleges in Scotland, and that is a substantial investment in the college infrastructure. We've more than kept our commitments in terms of the capital investment programme across colleges in Scotland, and I think Joanne Lamont, and indeed everybody else in this chamber, should welcome the fact that we have a record number of full-time higher education students in our colleges and universities in Scotland.
Joanne Lamont.
It's pretty basic in education. When you're asked a question, you answer the question. That is a complete failure. And of course, when this government came to office, a full-time college course was 720 hours a year. Then this government cut that to 640 hours a year. So that's what this government has done, cut the hours of teaching, cut the definition of a full-time course and graduated with honours in cooking the books. Only the First Minister could describe the cuts to the college sector as massive investment. Now, can I tell the First Minister, he often talks of full-time equivalents, but it's not full-time equivalents who gets jobs, it is people. It's not full-time equivalents who marry, raise families or build communities, it is people. So can the First Minister tell me, has the number of people going to college in Scotland gone up or down on his watch?
First Minister.
Joanne Lamont knows from many previous exchanges, this government has prioritised full-time courses in the colleges of Scotland. And the reason that we prioritise full-time courses in the colleges of Scotland is we believe that's the courses that lead people into employment and gives people the skills that are required. That's perhaps one reason why youth unemployment, although far too high in Scotland, is better than it is south of the border, and there's been a significant improvement over the last year. But if one law of answering or education answering questions is that fine, but one law of politics is to listen to the answer before you read out a pre-prepared question. And if, well, I don't recall a single question that Joanne Lamont hasn't read out from pre-prepared notes, and so I would just refer her to the answer to the first question, where I said I thought it is a matter of great pride in Scotland that this year we have a record number of students in higher education across the university and college sector of Scotland. And yes, for the benefit of Labour members, higher education is carried out in the college sector in Scotland, where, incidentally, people don't pay tuition fees thanks to the fact that Labour are not in government.
Joanne Lamont.
Can I assure the First Minister that my 20 years in education showed me what is an answer to a question and what isn't? That is displacement activity, not responding to the question that was asked. Well, let me tell the First Minister some of the facts which clearly no one has written down for him in the big book to read out. Because since 2007, the number of women going to college has fallen by 77,000. The number of adults who left school with no qualifications but got a second chance at college has almost halved. Nearly 60,000 people denied that second chance to learn. And despite what the First Minister says, even the number of 16 to 18-year-olds going to college has fallen by 7,000, and the number who are not in education, employment and training are going up. Can the First Minister now give me one of those most accurate answers ever given to any Parliament anywhere, and simply tell us, has the number of people going to college gone up or down since he came to office?
First Minister.
I have the figures for all students, if that would be helpful for Joanne Lamont. Well, I think, in the view of the Scottish Government, all students are important in Scotland. In 2006-7, full-time equivalents, 129,000. Well,
Order.
Full-time equivalence is kind of important. Can I say to the Labour Party, that's how you judge in terms of the teaching and the numbers who are receiving the teaching in Scotland. 129,343 in 2006-7, and in 2011-12, 133,199. Now, that seems to me, given the pressures on budgets, which even presumably the Labour Party acknowledge, or at least acknowledge them south of the border, seems to me a substantial improvement and a substantial achievement over these financially difficult years. It does also strike me that the fact that none of these students, the Scottish students in full-time education in Scotland, are paying tuition fees is another substantial achievement that should be welcomed. Perhaps that's why we have a record number of students in full-time higher education in Scotland, a record number this year, while numbers south of the border over the last few years have been falling like a stone. Thank goodness for the students of Scotland that the Labour Party did not come to power and impose tuition fees, as we know they most certainly would have done.
Joanne Lamont.
I hesitate to say this, but it feels as if a Scottish education was rather wasted in the First Minister. Because if there are pressures on further education budgets, they are at his choice. And the price for his educational choices are being borne by the women, the 25-year-olds, those who need a college education and cannot access it. Because, of course, education is a Scottish tradition and a modern necessity if Scotland is going to compete in the modern world. People don't just have one career or job now, they have several. We need lifelong learning to support people from unemployment to employment, from uncertain part-time work into full-time work. And the idea that a full-time course meets the needs of women with caring responsibilities and they can't access those places is nothing to do with government. It's an absolute disgrace. But what did John Henderson of Colleges Scotland tell the Parliament this week? He said, "We seem to have retreated from college's role in lifelong learning." He said, "We know that people's lives change and that the economy changes, and yet we no longer seem to have the capacity in the college system to respond to those changes." The First Minister, this First Minister, isn't reindustrialising Scotland. He is de-skilling Scotland. Isn't it about time? Isn't it about time we had a First Minister who left the displacement activity for elsewhere, does his job, shows he cares about education and pays attention. Instead, what do we get? A part-time equivalent.
First Minister.
I'm sure that Joanne Lamont was an enormous loss to the education sector.
Order.
The question is, was she an enormous gain to Scottish politics? And I don't think so, because she ignores the fact, which I've now mentioned several times, that having a record number of full-time students in higher education in Scotland seems to me a very substantial achievement. And every single one of that record number is important to this government, and that is the investment that has been secured. Now, Joanne Lamont says it's the choice of the Scottish Government over the budget. How could the overall budget of Scotland be the choice of the Scottish Government when it's controlled by the Westminster Treasury? And each and every subject that Joanne Lamont brings to this chamber, she said you should spend more on this subject, then more on this subject, oblivious to the fact that it's the choice of the Labour Party to leave a Tory Westminster Chancellor in charge of the overall Scottish budget. Now, she mentions John Henderson, the Chief Executive of College of Scotland, and she gave a quote from John Henderson. Incidentally, the first ever lifelong summit for lifelong learning was chaired this very morning by Mike Russell, something that the Labour Party didn't manage to do when they were in office for so long. But let's look at what John Henderson, the Chief Executive of Colleges Scotland, actually said. Quote, "The Scottish Government made a commitment to maintain colleges' cash funding earlier this year, and we are pleased that this has been incorporated into the draft budget for 2014-15. We also welcome the additional resources that are being allocated to the college sector for 2015-2016. The words of John Henderson. Now, if John Henderson, as Chief Executive of College of Scotland, can acknowledge that achievement against the most difficult, oppressive policy from Westminster in terms of budget, then why can't others in this chamber who endorse their faith on Scotland's budget being handled from London, why can't they acknowledge it as well? There has been a huge achievement in maintaining that record number of full-time higher education students in Scotland. There has been a huge achievement in stopping Scotland having tuition fees imposed upon it by the Tory party or the Labour Party. And what's more, every single one of these valuable young people in Scotland acknowledge and know the difference between Scottish education, where education is free for people with ability, and education elsewhere where it's based on the size of your chequebook.
Question number 2, Ruth Davidson.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. May I warmly welcome the teleperformance announcement today, and on a personal note, may I particularly welcome the 621 full-time posts that will be coming to Glasgow as part of that announcement. And could I ask the First Minister when he'll next meet the Prime Minister?
First Minister.
No plans near future.
Ms Davidson.
Thank you. A year ago, the Scottish Conservatives raised the issue of police station closures, revealing that a fifth of police stations had shut across Scotland since the SNP came to power. This week, we hear a further third are to close their doors to the public. Does the First Minister support these front desk closures?
First Minister.
I think Ruth Davidson should acknowledge that there is a substantial argument that our police officers and other staff in police stations should not be behind a desk seeing a limited number of members of the public, but should rather be in the communities of Scotland doing their best to keep this country safe. Now, the statistics in terms of the improvement in crime levels in Scotland are absolutely overwhelming. And I think it would be helpful if Ruth Davidson would acknowledge that very substantial improvement. We, after all, have record figures, not just of police officers across Scotland, but a record low, I think, for 39 years in recorded crime in Scotland. So just occasionally, would Ruth Davidson and her colleagues acknowledge that substantial justice achievement, which is not just the achievement of the Justice Secretary, but the achievement of every single one of these additional 1,000 police officers across this country.
Ruth Davidson.
I couldn't really work out there if the substantial argument was the First Minister supporting cuts that would mean there's only one police station in the whole of Aberdeen where someone can walk in off the street and speak to someone, or not. But when the plans include 3,000 civilian police job losses, how many uniformed officers will have to backfill? And let's look at the practical effects facing some communities who are facing local police closures. Most people visiting a police station do so to report a crime, to request a police officer to make a complaint, to turn themselves in for arrest, or other such matters that are now deemed minor or ancillary. Now, I don't know about the First Minister, but I don't think that reporting a crime is a minor matter, and I'm pretty sure that victims of crime don't think so either. But they're now being told that that all needs to happen by email or phone instead. And yet, a Freedom of Information request shows that up to 6,000 non-emergency calls to police a month go unanswered. So that's 56 police stations already closed on this First Minister's watch, another 65 front desks set to go, reduced access to the police for communities and victims of crime across Scotland, and no guarantee that someone will even answer your call when you pick up the phone to report a crime. Is this seriously the First Minister's definition of community policing?
Well,
First Minister.
That last suggestion is quite disgraceful in view of the huge achievements in crime enforcement in Scotland. And indeed, it's an insult to the police service of Scotland, which is totally unwarranted. Now, let's deal with the realities. Police Scotland and our serving police officers and our force have an exceptional record in crime prevention and tackling in Scotland and in answering the call of the public. Now, let's look at the reality, because I'm not sure if Ruth Davison has managed to look at the consultation documents, which are, of course, an operational matter for Police Scotland. But what it showed is that front counters in the stations concerned, at least 31 of the 65 public counters which is proposed are closed. The counters, not the police stations, are receiving less than 5 visits a day from the public for core business. Many are receiving an average of less than 1 a day, and some recorded just 1 visit over the entire 4-week survey period. Now, in the view of this, is Ruth Davison seriously suggesting that this initiative, in terms of the consultation document, is going to diminish public contact with the police? In contrast, the reality in the modern world is that most police contacted the police by phone or online. Police Scotland have arranged, of course, the new 101 non-emergency number, which receives 280,000 calls per month. And, of course, their presence in the social media now has 393,000 followers. Now, I've been looking at what the alternative is to the progressive policies proposed and pursued in Scotland in terms of policing, because we only need to take a glance south of the border to see what the alternative is. As we know, in this Parliament, we are proud of the fact that the SNP administration has fulfilled its commitment to have more than 1,000 additional police officers in Scotland. We have 17,496. If we had pursued the same policies as south of the border under successive governments, that wouldn't be 17,496, it would be 14,818. So let's be quite clear as what's happening where the Tories are in control. Less police stations, less police officers, and crime statistics which are not even near the success that's been achieved in Scotland.
Constituency supplementary, Liam MacArthur.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister will be aware that news that SSE is reviewing its involvement in marine energy projects in my constituency. While the outcome of SSE's discussions with its project partners is not yet clear, what is clear is that yesterday's announcement is causing anxiety within the wave and tidal sector. To maintain confidence and momentum within this vital sector, can he confirm that urgent efforts are being made in conjunction with UK ministers to identify ways in which greater support and certainty can be provided for those seeking to move from single devices to demonstration arrays? In particular, will he look at options for allowing grid infrastructure to be put in place, possibly underwritten or guaranteed by government? And will he ensure that his government is represented at the grid stakeholder meeting due to take place in Kirkwall on the 15th of October?
First Minister.
Well, both Fergus Ewing and myself have met SSE in the last few days. And the good news is that SSE's plans now mean that they'll stay within and continue investing, certainly in 3 out of 4 of their wave and tidal projects, taking them forward to planning consent, hopefully in 2015. And they hope for a good outcome in the 4th project. So I hope the constituency member will acknowledge that even before he asked the question, both the Energy Minister and myself, who understand the importance of tidal and wave projects, not just for Orkney, but for the whole of Scotland, have been taking appropriate action. Secondly, however, I think that the member should pay very close attention to what Fergus Ewing said just a few minutes ago. The basic difficulty, not just for marine energy in Scotland, but for offshore energy in general, is electricity market reform. It's causing significant uncertainty, not just in the tidal and wave sector, but offshore wind sector as well. And if he actually thinks that he could be of great use, perhaps he could follow the lead that we have made in trying to explain to his party colleague, the Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change, how it's hugely important, if these crucial technologies are to be developed, to reinforce confidence in the sector. That is exactly the opposite of what has happened over the last 18 months. And I hope his question is an indication that he at least understands the real connection between the process of electricity market reform and some of the investment questions which are prevailing among power companies and other investors in the marine and offshore sector in Scotland.
Question 3, Will Rennie.
To ask the First Minister what issues will be discussed in the next meeting of the Cabinet.
First Minister.
Meetings of great importance to the people of Scotland.
Will Rennie.
In May last year, I asked the First Minister about the closure of fire and police control rooms. He laughed and said I was spreading gloom, doom and despondency. But last week, half the fire control rooms were proposed for closure. And as Ruth Davison has just said, yesterday, 65 police stations are to be closed to the public. So instead of laughing, can he answer this? There are 10 police emergency control rooms in Scotland, handling thousands of 999 calls every year, an essential link in the battle against crime. How many police control rooms does he plan to close?
First Minister.
Well, in terms of gloom and despondency, we just had the perfect example from Willie Rennie. He just said that 65 police stations were to close. What's at issue is the counter service, and I'm sure he heard, as the rest of the chamber did, in terms of the explanation to Ruth Davidson of the important statistics in terms of the difference of having our police service out in the communities meeting the public with the additional officers that they have, as opposed to being caught, them and other staff, behind counters with very, very, very few visits indeed in many cases. That seems to me an efficient and proper deployment of resources. In terms of the control rooms, both for fire and police service, these are operational matters. But the key thing in terms of local policing in Scotland is to have the officers to be available in the communities. And the key thing for the fire service in Scotland is not to have a fire service so disillusioned that they're already on strike against his colleagues in London, but to have a fire service which is valued by this government and the people of Scotland.
Will Rennie.
I'm used to the First Minister making up the answers, but I'm not used to him making up the questions as well. He doesn't seem to know what his Chief Constable is up to. His Chief Constable plans to close at least 7 of the 10 police emergency control rooms across Scotland. That's police emergency control rooms in Aberdeen, Glenrothes, Inverness, Dumfries and more that will shut. Instead of protecting fire and police forces, centralisation has led to the asset stripping of local services. Decades of progress wiped away with a stroke of a pen. When we had our local democratic police and fire boards, they could put a stop to these damaging closures. The claim that this has nothing to do with him is claptrap. He sent his Minister, Fergus Ewing, to cut the ribbon and open the fire emergency control room in Aberdeen. Is he planning to send Fergus Ewing back round to close the control rooms and the police stations, turn off the lights and lock the doors? Or will the First Minister step in? Will he put an end to this?
First Minister.
Well, let me point out that local policing under the Scottish Police Service remains the bedrock. There's a designated local commander for each of the 14 divisions, which will work with communities, council and other partners to shape and deliver local policing. There will be a local policing plan for the 353 council wards in Scotland. What local policing means is having officers available in your community. And for a Liberal Democrat, currently in power with the Conservative Party, seeing what's happening to the fire service south of the border, well, I know Willie Rennie doesn't want to hear this, but there is a level of accountability in terms of what his party is doing, because we see the alternative to the local policing and relationship with the fire service in Scotland and exactly what is happening south of the border. Now, just let me repeat to Willie Rennie what I said to Ruth Davidson, because this is the alternative, remembering that the budgets we have in Scotland are set by Westminster, and the Barnett consequential of the budgets that are available in Westminster, they have taken the decision to drastically cut the numbers of police officers across England and Wales. They have drastically cut the number of police stations. We have taken a decision to have extra police officers in Scotland. So instead of having more than 1,000 less officers, which we'd have had under the plans pursued by the Tories and the Liberals, we have more than 1,000 more police officers in terms of when we took office. That has given us recorded crime down 35%, crime at its lowest level for 39 years, a clear-up rate for all crimes highest for over 35 years, violent crime down by almost half since 2006-07, and crimes of handling offensive weapons down by 60%. Now, these are the statistics and the things that really matter, and these have been the achievements of more officers under this government as opposed to slashing the fire service and the police under the government in Westminster that he supports.
Question number 4, Graham Day.
To ask the First Minister whether he will provide an update on the national flu campaign.
First Minister.
Well, the annual seasonal flu vaccination programme is one of the most important preventative health activities we undertake, protecting individuals, families, public health, reducing winter pressures in the National Health Service. The existing programme offers protection to 1 million people in Scotland. That's people aged 65 and over, adults and children with a health condition that means that they need protection, and that has led to 400 fewer deaths annually, 2,000 fewer hospitalisations and 25,000 fewer general practice consultations. And as the Chamber will know, this year we started the rollout of vaccination to the children of Scotland because we know from the statistics that currently 5,000 young people in Scotland are hospitalised with regard to flu or its complications.
Graham Day.
Thank the First Minister for that answer. Clearly, these vaccination programmes will go some way towards preventing people, particularly older people, from presenting to A&E this winter. But could the First Minister set out what further actions are being taken to get the NHS ready for winter?
First Minister.
Well, last year saw increased pressures on the National Health Service, including an early start to the norovirus season, increase in respiratory illnesses and a rise in the number of people attending accident and emergency. Through the Unscheduled Care Action Plan, over £9 million has been released this year to National Health Service boards to support that planning, which is triple the amount given to boards for winter planning last year. Some examples already in place include the rollout of electronic whiteboards across Scotland, which work as a digital ward, allow clinicians to see how patients flow through the entire hospital system, enabling them to be charged home quicker. This, along with the flu vaccination programme, gives us substantial confidence that every preparation is being made to keep the people of Scotland safe over this winter.
Question 5, Jackie Baillie.
To ask the First Minister what the Scottish Government's position is on the decision taken at the COSLA leaders' meeting to back the petition from the No to Bedroom Tax campaign calling for £50 million to mitigate the impact of the so-called bedroom tax.
First Minister.
Well, as Jackie Baillie and COSLA well know, that the legal maximum set by the statutory instrument under Section 70 of the Child Support Pensions and Social Security Act of 2000 that can be added to discretionary housing payments is £20.2 million. That is exactly the funding which has been supplied by the Scottish Government to assist in the mitigation of the bedroom tax across Scotland, and that's been widely welcomed by people across the country. And unlike Jackie Baillie and her colleagues, the Scottish Government's position on the bedroom tax has been clear from the start. It is wrong and it should be scrapped.
Jackie Baillie.
Can I, as ever, thank the First Minister for his response, but, you know, he can do something more. He has the power already to pay local government and housing associations. It is really very simple. And if there is any confusion on his part, move over and we'll show you exactly how to do it. The First Minister will be aware that it was only the SNP and the Tories that voted against the budget call for 50 million to mitigate the bedroom tax. Is he aware that the COSLA leaders also agreed to back my member's bill to protect all social tenants from eviction? So will he now join with them, with the Church of Scotland, the STUC, the Poverty Alliance, the No to Bedroom Tax campaign and many more besides, and will he back the bill, or are they all wrong?
First Minister.
What a contrast between Jackie Bailey's attitude to the £20 million, the legal maximum that we have under current powers, and the response of people across Scotland. Can I refer to the Daily Record of page 2 today, which lists where the money goes from the £20 million to help mitigate the impact of the bedroom tax across Scotland, and refer Jackie Bailey to the quote of Shelter Scotland's Director Graham Brown. We welcome the speed at which the Scottish Government moved to make available the £20 million. It means that local authorities can now offer a lifeline to thousands more households across Scotland struggling to pay their rent as a direct result of the iniquitous bedroom tax. You see, unlike Jackie Bailey, we've been clear about the need to repeal this bedroom tax from the start. Unlike Jackie Bailey, we took effective action when Shelter presented us with a legal way to help mitigate the impact of the bedroom tax. And unlike Jackie Bailey, this party and this government believes in taking the powers over social security so that impositions like the bedroom tax will never be enforced to the Scottish people again.
Question 6, Linda Fabiani.
To ask the First Minister what progress the expert working group on welfare and constitutional reform is making.
First Minister.
Well, the group has issued its call for evidence, including the views, the experience and information of those in interest in the future welfare in Scotland. It will submit its independent report to ministers this coming spring.
Linda Fabiani.
Thank you, First Minister. At Tuesday's Welfare Reform Committee, despite Labour's claims to the contrary, the expert working group confirmed that the Scottish Government can abolish the bedroom tax immediately from independence in 2016. Will the First Minister reaffirm that if elected as first government of an independent Scotland, the SNP will scrap the bedroom tax?
First Minister.
Well, I'm reminding, as I hear a muttering of Jackie Move-Aside Bailey's astonishing interview on Newsnight Scotland on the 3rd of September, where she said, "I'm not saying that we cannot develop our own welfare system. I am saying we should not develop our own welfare system." In other words, instead of wanting to see these matters controlled in this Parliament, Jackie Bailey is content to see the bedroom tax imposed by Westminster Government. Quite content to continue with the Tories, in alliance with the Tories, in making these draconian cuts to the most vulnerable in Scottish society. Our submission is clear, that with independence we can create a fairer welfare system based on the needs of the Scottish people. And yes, I can confirm that if this party is elected, then one of our first acts of that independent Scottish Government will be to scrap the bedroom tax.
That ends First Minister's questions. We now move to members' business. Members who are leaving the chamber should do so quickly and quietly.